Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you on our webinar, Brand Storytelling in the Times of Corona. It's been great to see so many people from different places around the world. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Shlomi. How are you?
Good. How's things going in Montreal?
You know, the usual, still a few snowflakes in April.
Yeah, we're still enjoying living in paradise here, you know, when there's no hurricanes, of course.
I know that much.
Yeah. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background, your backstory?
I'd love to. Thank you so much. I've been storytelling since about 2003, back in where I was working for Orange, which is the equivalent of AT&T or Bell. Orange had a few transformation objectives and projects on the table at the time I was there. And I had the mandate to transform certain business units into more profitable or more customer-driven units with a very diverse population, very diverse group of employees. So it was my first tackle at storytelling was in that context, how to make everyone come on board with new practices, new norms, new philosophies, how to perceive the client. And at the time, I was reading a lot about Dr. Coleman and his how the brain works and the different areas of the brain and what allows us to. Pardon me?
It's fascinating.
Right.
Yep.
And then it got me into the world of storytelling, how to create a story that really compels people to act. And that was for me the beginning of a wonderful chapter in creating a three-part stories that are actually speaking to people and that make people want to do something with their lives and with the new practices around them. And then from there, well, once I did that, it was more of an HR project. I went into product launches. And again, I used the storytelling technique into visualize new products in new settings. That allowed us to convince the boards of the opportunity of such a product, thanks to storytelling. And little by little, I use it in other sceneries, in other contexts, such as crowdfunding campaigns or pitches to investors. And that's where I really realized how the emotional part of a story is so important. Even if you're in front of the most irrational crowd, there's still that emotion that does the difference in a story.
So true, so true.
So happy to talk about that today.
Yeah, and actually Diana bring some great points that we actually covered when she was a guest on my Visual Storytelling Today podcast, and it was fantastic. So definitely, if you want to look up for that episode, just search for Visual Storytelling Today on your favorite podcast network. A little bit about myself. So my background is over 20 years of digital marketing experience working on the agency side, but largely on the brand side for major brands like IBM. I was the head of social and mobile for their hardware business units. Worked for Nokia before they got acquired, American Express, and also spent some time on the West Coast in San Diego working for Gateway Computers. For those of you who remember those cow pattern in boxes. So all along, I was actually nursing my passion for visual stories, and it kind of lent itself in two areas. First one is, of all areas, classic Italian cinema. I'm not from Italy, I'm originally from Israel. And this is just a pure 100% passion. And it's kind of mushroomed into interest in those black and white films. I started a blog, cafepellicola.com. You can check some film reviews that I've done there. The other area was video art. My father-in-law, his name was Bookie Schwartz, and he was one of the early pioneers of video art. And his work is collected in major museums, the Guggenheim, the Whitney, and the Smithsonian. So he passed away in 2009, and since then we've been managing his estate, spreading his art legacy. So when I started the Visual Storytelling Institute, I really wanted to combine marketing on one side and visual stories. And when I started, visual storytelling was primarily referred to as graphic design or photography. And what we do is really bringing the gospel of visual storytelling from the world of art into marketing. So what I focus on is really training corporate workshops, and also teach full semester courses at the university here in Miami. The other part is production. We have a full production house that we produce high-end videos, animations, brand documentaries, presentation, and others. And the last part is really advisory and consulting. So with that, I hope we convinced you that we probably know what we're talking about when it concerned storytelling, right, Diana?
Well, we certainly will try to demonstrate that in the following hour.
Exactly. So let's start with the agenda. So we're going to start with a very high level, what is brand visual storytelling? Then we're going to drill down into the why it is so important, especially now with the pandemic raging out and creating havoc in the economy. And then we're going to dig much deeper into examples from major industry brands from around the world, pretty much. And we're going to establish, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to finish up with the recommendations and actionable tips. And as you could see, we're also going to leave some time for Q&A if we can make it. All right. So let's start with what is visual storytelling? So visual storytelling, in essence, is really a marketing strategy that pretty much has three conditions. One is to use the 3-act story structure. And it's practically Act 1, setting, Act 2, conflict, Act 3, resolution. And you can definitely mix and match. It doesn't have to be in this order. Second condition is that you put your customer as the hero of the story. So it's not about you, the brand. The brand is simply a guide or a mentor that really follow the hero, in this case, the customer, as they battle different dragons and problems. The last condition is really that you use a visual format. It could be videos, images, all the way up to VR and AR. The importance here is really that we know that when you combine visual, our brain processes visual 60,000 times faster than text. And we also know that 9 out of 10 people prefer information packaged stories versus facts and stats. So when you combine the two, you have a powerful Trojan horse to really connect with people. So Diana, let's move to really what makes a good story from your perspective.
Yes, and I totally agree with the visual aspect. One of the main channels I used when I was storytelling to teams and to investors was a visual scenery, very, very little text. It was all, I even used cartoons for certain groups which appealed to them and were more persuasive because that was already something that they read in their free time. So yes, visuals is so much more compelling. And it's expected to tell stories more than selling the product. 92% studies show that brands are expected to tell stories, and whether the product is there in the background or not, the fact that it's telling a story that moves people is in and of itself the right move for brands. So as we expect that, even more so in this period that we're experiencing. A story must have 3 acts. Now, in theory, it must have 3 acts. There's always an issue or an event trigger that is the first act. Something happens, the customer has the need, or there's a lack of something. There's an event. In this case, it's the crisis of COVID. And then what do? We need a solution. The solution is the hero. It can be a person, it can be a situation, it can be a service, it can be a product, it can be an ensemble of things, but there needs to be a hero, and that solution is expected. We are wired that way. When there's a problem, we are awaiting as us individuals for a solution. And that is the Act 2. And the Act 3 is actually the outcome of that solution. What does it look like once the hero arrives? How are we going to experience the reassurance or the comfort of that solution? We need to see it displayed visually, and that is Act 3. So what it means is all's well that ends well, just like we see in the stories that we used to read when we were growing up. So it's the same principle that lives with us as adults till this day. And that's what needs to be created. Now, if I can just open a parentheses, the next examples that we'll be providing you may not have all three acts displayed in that same story. It's to be inferred, but we will be there to analyze them with you.
Great point, Diana.
Third of our lives is spent daydreaming, so we need to have stories to get them out of that and really aspire to doing something better. And what Rachel Gillett from Fast Company said, the only time we stop flitting is when we have a good story in front of us. This is where we come in as entrepreneurs and businesses, try to get them out of their daydream, especially the negative ones, in order for them to feel better about themselves.
No, it's so true, because when you think about it, any great story is really about how you can make people feel good about themselves, as we said. And once you feel good about yourself, you actually tend to associate it to the storyteller and to the brand in this case. So think about that, how you can make people take the best version of themselves through the story you tell.
So true. And it doesn't translate into sales necessarily. It just translates into a relation with your company, with the brand that you've been a client or not a client with. That's what matters also. It's the relationship that the story allows you to create.
Absolutely. Yeah. So since we are talking in the context of the corona, what stories should we tell? We figured we should start by understanding what customer really want these days. So Edelman did a fantastic study just from last month, and what they found is it's pretty obvious. People right now really don't care about salesy messages, and they tend to lose their trust. So really be careful with any messages that looks like business as usual, because it's going to backfire. The second interesting tidbit here is that people are really looking for stories that really can communicate and demonstrate that they can really, you are aware of the situation. It's not, as we say, it's a new normal. There's definitely new constraints, and how you're going to impact people's lives with this story. So it's really important to connect the two, that you really know your customers and also realize they're in a new situation and what can you do about it. So these are two important insights as we're going to go into the examples that you're going to see in a few minutes to kind of set the stage for that.
I got a question for everyone right now. On that last note that Shlomi led us in, brands only speak about products in ways that show they are aware of the crisis and the impact on people's lives. Do you know a brand that has avoided the crisis altogether? And please do mention that one brand in the comment section. We'd love to know.
Awesome.
I have one.
Cool.
So in this instance, Shlomi is probably going to tell us more about why it's so important to talk about the fact that we're sensitive to those impacted by the virus. Everyone, Maslow's hierarchy has been around for forever. And I think now it's more than ever important that we bring it back into the discourse.
Yeah, because when you think about it, Diana and everybody, is that right now we are basically dealt with a new canvas. It's almost like 9/11 and other, the recession of 2008. People are really stressed right now. There's a lot of ambiguity and unknowns, and people really move towards physiological needs or safety needs. That's the main focus right now. And what does it mean? It means that you are worried about getting groceries. You are worrying for the safety of your loved ones, making sure everybody is healthy, keeping the guidelines, social distancing, and so forth. So this picture that you see right now, from what we've seen, is there are three key questions that people ask brands these days. One is, does this brand get me and understand my needs right now? Number two, is this brand helping me right now? And is this brand showing up for the community right now? So all these three questions are really encapsulated in the bottom layers of the Maslow hierarchy. So this is something that you're going to see in the example that we show you right now, how brands are addressing the really basic needs of on people's mind these days.
Right. So we're going a little bit into the advertising world. First and foremost, can you tell me if you're familiar with the notion of archetypes? Yes, no, in the messaging, so I get an idea. Wonderful.
Cool.
More?
Yeah, see, we have a bunch of people that are
coming
from the space.
So archetypes, I'll do a little academia, is developed by the psychiatrist Jung Hu, who mentioned that we all have symbolics in our minds that have been transferred by our ancestors. And these symbolics, advertisers are owning and making their own, translating their personality and hoping to talk to the consumers that feel, have the same values, share the same symbols. When you see a brand, you tend to see, okay, what are they talking about? What are they feeling? What is that brand about? That's an archetype. So there are 12. We've done a little bit of our homework and highlighted a few brands during this virus, during this crisis, that have campaigned with a Solinol, with a solidarity message, and also did a cross comparison with the 12 archetypes, and this is what we come up with. So basically, the explorer, the sage, a lot of the caregivers, that pretty much is a straightforward. The regular, the jester have been the dominant archetypes. And the next slides will dig directly into the brands that have, some of them have done awesome jobs of engaging with our public, showing they're there, that they're not abandoning them, because that's one thing that archetypes are good at, is translating their value systems in any situation. We're in a crisis now. Brands are expected more than ever to show that they're there, and that they're, we value their customers, and the relationship continues. That's basically the message. The relationship, it continues. We are there for you.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to demonstrate, and also we're going to analyze whether it's effective or if it's a miss.
Exactly. So look, as we're going to go through the examples, as Diana just explained, look for the affinity bridges between the brand archetype and what the story is about, because it needs to be related.
Exactly. And there's also one thing before we go in and dig under, look under the hood, is a brand needs to pay attention to cohesiveness. So if they've been an explorer, if they were perceived as an explorer, if their customers are explorers themselves, they need to be careful in their campaigns in this crisis, and not go at the other extreme altogether. Why? Because there's a risk that might sound fake, that may sound less authentic. So there's really a fine line between, choosing to stay in your archetype and not go to the other border of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Extreme of the spectrum. Sorry.
Awesome. All right. So now that we know what visual storytelling, brand storytelling means, we know what people want, and also Diana gave us a nice review about brand archetypes. Now it's time to kind of dig deeper into the examples. So we're going to start first with the cause marketing example. Cause marketing is, for anyone that might not familiar with the term, is anything that the brand is doing for example, for a charity, for a good cause. So what we found is that there are three categories of cause marketing campaigns right now in the market. There is pure play money donation, where brands like Vix or Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, decide, I'm going to donate X amount of dollars to fight the coronavirus. So we see here a few examples of that. Another category, which is interesting, it's how brands try to weave in their product into the cause marketing program. In this case, we're going to show you example from Popeyes, Coursera, for example, it's another one. And if you think back to the Maslow hierarchy that really focus on the third rung in the hierarchy, the self-esteem and growth needs. In this case, Coursera, what is doing, instead of just upselling their courses, they're actually upscaling a whole community of health workers by giving out free courses, or universities in this case. So this is just an example that shows how people are actually using this. Sorry. The third category is the product line change. So we saw a bunch of examples of major brands like Mercedes and Ralph Lauren and Brooks Brothers that actually decided to change the product line and start producing really needed products to fight the coronavirus, like masks and gowns and ventilators and others. So this is another flavor of cause marketing that we're seeing right now that brands are doing. So let's start with the first example of Popeyes. So Popeyes here, what they're doing, they're actually combining this is the second category where they combine the product with an incentive. So they decided to start a campaign that for every order that you make, you're going to get a free password from Netflix. And this way they encourage people to stay at home. So in essence, what they're doing here is really, when you think in story terms, Act One is really the setting. You know, people are mostly, you know, locked down at home, might be craving for a Popeyes meal, and this is something that they really want to fix. And what they do, they see this smiley face here that offer them an opportunity not only to relieve their hunger, but also to get a free password for binge watching. So the backstory for those of you that are not living in the US is that back in August of last year, Popeyes had the fried chicken sandwich that created a viral campaign, and that was a very smart thing they did. They started the campaign August 19, last year, and August 27th, Popeyes announced that they ran out and it's going to take them some time to restock. So they created a whole viral campaign, and they really gained over $70 million in marketing exposure. So this is the backstory for the fried chicken sandwich that you see here. So in the back of the minds of people is that this is really something we really crave, and that's how they connected the two. They established craving for this product with the current situation of people locked down at their homes, and the fact that they can alleviate it with entertainment.
Right. That's why we mentioned the magician archetype, because they're sort of bringing a fun, entertaining flavor to the brand. Yep. And just keeping things light. I think that's the goal, is just to make people not feel panic, not feel anxiety, but to feel right. that they're being taken care of, being entertained. Pampered. So that fits well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I really like that, how they
yep.
map that out.
Mm-hmm. And another comment that we forgot to mention in the beginning, when you think about a 3-act story structure, in some of these examples, some of the acts are not going to be very explicit within the visual story, and they are really inferred, and people actually complete the story in their minds. Like in this case, people know that the fried chicken sandwich was a major, hit, and so they know, so they have this craving already in their mind. That's the setting, right. Act One, and that's how they build the conflict. I'm hungry now, and here's the solution.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Most of the ads that we'll be showing you are inferred. There's only 1 or 2 that have the 3-act model, or maybe 2 out of 3. So most of them you need to infer yourself in order to engage with the story. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So number two, I think, is Mercedes, the ruler.
Yep.
So here we have just the backstory is that Mercedes-AMG is a brand, a Mercedes brand, powerful motors, powerful engines, top-notch vehicles, but they're also partners with engineering firms, and that's what they're outlining in this ad. This is taken on Instagram, by the way. This is a respiratory aid that they're publicizing and also saying, hey, we're putting aside our brand, our line of products right now and focusing more on the health issues. And that is all to their honor. And at the same time, it shows their authority in terms of engineering, in terms of technology. It just fits in well with their archetype, their brand personality that they've always showed all these years. But now it's catered towards the crisis. And that brings forth,
yeah,
pardon me?
I even read that they actually completed this project in 100 hours, which is insane.
Exactly. You've seen a lot of miracles in the last few weeks.
Yeah, people are so jazzed up to help.
They're carrying their legacy of technology-driven companies that want to make the world a better place. They're carrying it well here. And you have, what that brings is powerful testimonials from their customers who speak from the heart. I love how Mercedes is doing all this, you know? And then, as if that wasn't enough, Mercedes answers back with emojis, and the customer feels very, very, very honored or very touched, very moved by the fact that Mercedes answered his own post. So that is called, you know, demonstrating empathy. That is called maintaining the relationship with your customers or your future customers. So kudos to Mercedes.
Yeah, and it also ties nicely with what we said earlier about how ways you can make your customer feel good about themselves. And you can see this is a fantastic example. The moment of surprise and the emotions by the fact that Mercedes just responded.
Right. It's sort of a celebrity reaction, you know. This big brand Mercedes responded to my comment. You know, who am I?
Exactly.
But wonderful. I think Mercedes is listening. Mercedes is observing and acting upon it. So that's
being responsive.
A
Absolutely.
great touch of empathy.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we move to reality thread category, and here we have IKEA Spain. And let me just say like the gist before we show the video. Yeah.
I like the fact that Shlomi called it reality thread, because that's exactly what we're going to see in the next few examples. It's your reality, our reality, and brands are just tapping into our reality, not making it nicer, not making it elusive. No, just tapping it in our day-to-day, which is a great mark of respect for their clients. So this one campaign was done in Spain. As you know, there were many European countries that were impacted very hard, very roughly, and Spain was one of them. So this is what they come up with in a very, very short time. Please tell us if you have a difficulty listening to the audio.
Yo soy tu hogar y voy a estar para ti, aguantando todo lo que venga.
All right.
Nice. The video perfectly.
Awesome. I hope it was playing good on you.
So what do you see here? You see, if we have to take out the 3 acts of a story, you see the end result, which is, well, actually, you're in the solution. You're in the act 2. The persona, in this case, may be the home. The home is the hero. The home is what makes the confinement sustainable, what makes the confinement a nice place to be. And of course, they're all, you know, the IKEA furniture, the IKEA landscape is all there. but we don't even pay attention to that. We pay attention to the mood. We pay attention to the personas within the story that are showing how they're spending their time, and most probably also in giving us the influencing us to do the same, to act upon those scenes. And what I really like about it also is that they took the time to target different sociodemographics, different social
customer
backgrounds,
segments. Yep.
houses, apartments, couples,
Yep.
families, elderly, and those that are concerned, those that are with children. So I really want to stress the fact that they took the time to carve out these different mini stories within that video, which shows that they understand their different target markets, and there's not 1 ounce of selling in that message.
Yep.
All it's saying is that they're promoting best practices in this virus, in this crisis. They're promoting best practices, which is social responsibility at its best. They're not selling, they're not promoting, they're not saying go to our site, we're still delivering. There's none of that. It's just stay at home, try to make the best of it. We'll get through this.
Absolutely. And I really liked, the fact that how nicely it connects with their brand archetype, the caregiver, because they chose the home, as you said, as the character, the main character in the story. And by using the home as the hero, that actually is like the container of all the memories of its owner. So it's really interesting to see how the home is kind of talking to different contexts, different demographics. And it's fantastic to see, because it really, makes the caregiver even stronger. And the fact that, as you said, there's no product visible. It's a great example of a story that really plays on the higher purpose objectives. And these are
the higher purpose. Gina says it's very emotional.
Yep.
You're so right. Do you think that the brand keeps emotions in the right way, that they translate the emotions in the right way? I'd love to hear your views about that one specific brand, and that they're really targeting it in a nice, empathetic, supportive way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the fact that right now we have actually a real-time focus group, but the fact, that Gina just mentioned the emotions, I think this is something that is already resonating on the emotional level. And as we said before, people process information first through their emotions. And the way it works is kind of interesting. You really, process, in this case, this clip, and you kind of map it to your personal stories. Something in this video mapped perfectly with your own experience of living in a home, and what is your relationship with your home. And then you can relate to what you see here in these mini stories. So I think from that perspective, that's where the trigger comes into play.
And what Monica says, the moments highlighted are touching and real. Yes, the real aspect is so strong in this video that you cannot even find that it's opportunistic. You cannot deduce that the brand is doing it to gain more followers. It's actually really an authentic message.
Exactly.
Caring for their people. It's a caring message all the way.
Yeah. Let's move on, because we kind of need to run with the time.
The music has great impact too. Yes, you're absolutely right.
So let's touch on every example, because we have only 20 minutes, and I want to kind of open them up for, Q&A and questions.
Okay.
So do you want to talk about the cannabis example real quick?
So this one here is real quick, it's the cannabis company, the Thrive. Here you do have all 3 acts of the story, which was made in 48 hours. It's only, the movie's only eyes circulating from different generations, different situations. So those that are anxious, those that are worrying about their next job, about their next expenditures. So it's really a very heartfelt message that the society is in a bad spell right now.
Absolutely.
And that, so that's basically act one, the triggering event. And then we get to the solution. The hero is a little bit, it depends. The hero is cannabis. Let's just say
yeah,
it.
that's the product. Yeah, I mean, that's what they
the
sell.
Product, and it will allow you to relax and to deal with it, in a more relaxed,
in a different way. Exactly.
And that's Act 2. And Act 3 is the delivery man that hands the package to
right.
the
And there's a video. We can definitely going to include it in the recap email.
It actually won a prize because it was done in record timing and with employees at virtual. It was not done under one site. It was all virtual editing and put together. So
yeah, this one is a very unusual example because Audi is actually broke all the rules here. And what they did, they actually created a 4-hour ambient video. So I'm going to play it on mute because it's just music.
No, we're
in the
not.
background.
We're not playing the 4 hours.
Not 4 hours, just to give you a sense of it. So all you see is really, the Audi just going through a journey in Australia, and you develop the story in your head, and you could see the whole scenery through the product. In this case, the moving car. So I thought this is a really interesting execution because people are stressed, and if there's a whole category of ambient videos on YouTube, that's following the same philosophy. If you like these things, you can check Pro Walks. Actually, somebody walks in Italy, Firenze, for example, and there's no words. It's just viewing a landscape through the eyes of the person, in this case, in the car. So we thought this is really a fantastic example, and people really love that.
Quickly, we thought it was a sage archetype. There's something a little bit spiritual about this, where you can escape and you can take a breather and say, "Oh my God, look at the nature around us," and really appreciate what's out there, and that you can aspire to visualize through driving.
It's like a simulator in essence.
Yeah, it is.
Legacy power. All
so
right.
these are all the institutional brands
that actually end up being a flop. So why we say flops? Because you could see here the examples of McDonald's and Coca-Cola, major brands, and the reaction from people was that they chose the easy way out. All they did was really spacing out their logo, and people really didn't like that. They expected much more from these brands where they have such a deep loyalty over the years, and really, people didn't get it. So that's something to think about. But on the flip side, we have this example that Diana actually found from Jeep. And look what they did. What a difference, right?
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
because
it just makes you
persona. It keeps the persona of the explorer.
Yep.
But this time it says explore the indoors. So I thought the wordplay was perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising. They still within the story, but they just invert the story. Instead of like exploring the outdoors, it's indoors. Yeah.
And they stay true to that explorer nature because consumers love Jeep for that explorer archetype. So they really find the right combination.
Exactly.
I don't know who their brand was, but their agency was, but
no,
good on them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, let's move on.
Burger King.
So is it me now?
Yeah, go for it.
I think different from McDonald's. McDonald's only separated the two arcs, and that was criticized as being very opportunistic, too easy, Burger King did something that no other brand has ever done, which is remove their main product, totally put a line through it, the Whopper, and say, you know what, forget the Whopper, stay home. Exactly. That is a very, very bold move.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're a regular brand. They're the everyday brand. So they're direct. They're talking to their customers directly. They're not using the white gloves. Like, guys and girls, stay home. Forget your every Sunday Whopper, and you'll get that eventually. But for now, do what you have to do.
And it's so true to the Burger King, a tradition in kind of breaking the rules. Their previous campaign just before the corona broke out was the decaying burger that really was showing the burger in its worst way, that it's decaying over time.
Right.
Only to communicate that they're using natural ingredients. So that was another fantastic campaign. So this is a great example of that consistency of innovation. All right, we have Ford.
So Ford here is basically a video of Ford lending a hand, okay? They're just not there to sell. They're there to alleviate the burden for those that are renting their car, for those that have a lease on their car, a loan on their car. They're telling them, hey, we've been here through the wars. We've been here through all the storms. We're a strong, reliable brand. Count on us. We're going to help you get through this. And they acted it out by alleviating their financial burden and giving them a few months to breathe. Yeah. So that's all it was. What you see here, the blue background with white characters, that was the entire ad with a few patriotic and very strong words.
Exactly.
That's why, yeah.
And this is another example of what we call an origin story, where they actually explain, the backstory, how they started, just to communicate that, we're not, telling you we are with you together just now. We've been doing this forever now, and this is our really legacy. So I think that was powerful as well.
It's a hero. It's the hero archetype that they want to portray.
Let's go to some other example of missing authenticity and clarity, meaning like a bunch of flops. And the first one here is from Verizon. It's a caregiver of Sage. I'm going to play it just for a few seconds, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
The network has to be prepared to absorb whatever it's going to come its way.
We're always preparing.
Make sure that the network is working all the time.
We are constantly looking.
So the idea is that they use their employees to communicate that we are with you, we feel your pain, but the result came out really corporate, very clean and polished. There's no kind of raw authenticity, and that's why we think it doesn't really resonate, unlike other examples that we found, like Kraft Heinz, for example. They used their staffers in the factories to create an ad by themselves, and that was extremely emotional. Definitely look it up. Another good example that used employees was from Panera Bread, and in this case they used their Panera delivery people to actually use their smartphone and create a visual story, and that was extremely powerful as well, because the actual visual story is formatted as the frame of a smartphone. So this is a people like you and me that use their smartphone. So it's very authentic. So in this case, the result here with Verizon, it's very polished, very clean, very business as usual. So there's no emotional connection.
The network has to.
Mercedes, Diana?
Now, yeah, I mean, Mercedes, we love Mercedes. They've done, you should go visit their Instagram page. It's full of stories in there. They've targeted taxi drivers, kids, giving them things to do. I mean, they really stopped their product line to care for their customers. So kudos for that. Now, once in a while, they have a little error of passage, and this is one. They published a GIF. Everyone knows what a GIF is. It is a short animated post where in the first slide, please go back to the previous one. In the first one, you see, thanks for keeping distance. And then in that same image, you have a change in wording, and it says, Shlomi, it says, let's share, and then them comes, and then with comes. So
yeah, it's really
can
confusing.
You just imagine that if you don't have the context and you hear, let's share them with, that you could go and interpret
Yeah, it's really
any,
bad.
anything and everywhere. And it's really not the right context to put share and them in the same sentence. It's only when you read the post that we've added for you. Please, Shlomi, next slide. That you know what they're talking about, but you have to read it. Thanks to everybody for maintaining social distancing guidelines during these times. So the them is referring to guidelines.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not
Yes.
sure everyone took the time to interpret what that meant.
It's too
So
much to process.
it is very, very tricky to go that route. And I would have tested it prior to publishing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some other brands that actually their drawback is that they forgot to remove campaigns that are not connected to the times. So we have a bunch of them, like KFC, the finger licking campaign. So obviously now it's a huge no-no. And another example from Coors, where they had the official beer of working remotely. Now, when the whole world and his sister are working remotely right now. So those two are really bad examples of brands that didn't take the time to kind of monitor what they have and kind of remove campaigns that are unrelated.
Right.
This is a fun one that actually from my smartphone, I just received this notification from Google Maps. What's for dinner? Check out places to eat and drink nearby. And that was really a week ago that I got this message. So another example of a brand that's most likely out of bureaucracy or lack of proper governance protocols, still producing these notifications. All right, so now we're going to switch gears here. We show you a bunch of examples that cover different aspects of brand storytelling. We want to kind of give you now what you can do with this information. So just to set the stage, we all know that because of the coronavirus, spending habits have been changed. And what you could see in this example is that obviously there is a much stronger skew towards buying necessities, obviously groceries and travel, luxury, and all that is really going down. So we came up with our projection for a timeline. And it's really interesting. What you see here on the y-axis is the anxiety level, and on the x-axis is the time. So right now we think we are in what we call stage 1, the emergency mode. That means we are before the spike in a number of infections, and it really depends where you are in the world. But generally speaking, there is the period before the spike where we are in really high emergency mode. And the second period, it's a post-spike, but before having a vaccine. We call this a semi-normalcy, where some businesses are going to be opened. People might be allowed to go out partially, but there is still uncertainty in terms of safety. The next milestone is once vaccine and drugs are found, and this stage is the normalcy. And again, we don't know how long it's going to last, but we do know that people talk about 18 months until vaccine will be found. So that period we don't know how it's going to look like, but in most cases, people will have a peace of mind that there is a vaccine. So we're going to talk about, things you could do just to get prepared. So this is a brand storytelling strategy that some of you already know. So the first thing you need to do is really look at your brand archetype, your brand narrative, and start listening to your customers, what campaigns you're having right now, avoiding the problems of Coors, and remove any campaigns that's not related. Look what your competitors are doing and try to learn from them. And with these insights, really come up with a plan for a visual storytelling program that it's relevant, really addressing customer pain points. It's really impacting their life in a good way. Make sure it's sensitive, obviously, to what the situation is dictating, and make it differentiated from your other competitors. That's really important. Last thing in your plan is make sure you can actually execute against it. So it's got to be doable. The last thing is really, once you roll out your program, educate your employees because they are your first storytellers, and consider what platform you're going to communicate your story on, because every platform has its own culture. So obviously Instagram is different from Facebook and others. Consider which buyer segments you are telling your story. And Diana said rightly that in the example of IKEA, they address different audiences. And also consider the stage. Are they just at the top of the funnel, at the discover stage, or they are in the mid funnel? That's important too. And lastly, just keep optimizing and learn from your campaigns, test, rinse, and repeat. So this is something that you should do through each of the 3 periods that I just described, because the market condition will change drastically. So you want to be prepared to be responsive to what's going on. So Diana, you want to take the first one?
Sure. So this is an iterative approach. We don't pretend to have the truth. We'll be also adapting as we go, because pandemics don't happen every 10 years. But based on other forms of crises and how we also experience our own in business settings, we traced a framework for you. Stage 1, in the current situation, the current context, where people are losing their jobs, some are working from home. The only word that should be on everyone's lips right now is empathy. And so the stories need to be full of that, and show that there are people coming together, and that there are solutions, that there are freebies to be given out. We see a lot of those around here in North America. I don't know about Europe, you might want to chime in.
Yep.
But we have a lot of companies, offering their solutions for free, helping people professionally get ahead of the curve themselves. They lost a job. Let's get training for another type of job. Really helping out. This is what we're seeing right now.
Exactly.
And also showing that partners are important. Bring your partners in your stories. Bring them, evolve them, make them shine. If you have providers, vendors that you're working with, I think that's the best time to do that.
Yeah. And when we think about the semi-normalcy, the second period, think of it as life at half capacity. Really, we're going to have some partial economic activity, and at this point, people will just look for reassurance, because again, it's a new ball game. People don't know how to react to a semi-normalcy, where some businesses will be open, others not. So in this case, some brands could use a simple how-to stories. We see them a lot on YouTube. If it's related to your product, maybe you want to educate your customers how to solve the pain point. Also consider really using your customers as the storytellers, what is known as user-generated content. To be continued stories, this is another interesting one, is especially because we are still in a uncertainty mode. We don't know how the story will end. It's kind of interesting to create stories where you don't know how the end is going to shape up, and kind of use this as a series so you can keep engagement going from story to story. And social responsibility narrative, I think it's going to be a big theme for now and for the rest of the next 2 to 3 years. Absolutely, because people would like to work and with brands that really care about them.
So we have that social responsibility narrative in stage 3 also. I think it will be a long-standing message.
Yep.
Companies will need to be informed of what the government's doing, of how they should behave, and they should inform their customers and their own stakeholders on their own position and what they're doing to make the world a better place, so to speak. So these are the main, and when we're going to be vaccinated and immunized, hopefully by 2021, we'll need to celebrate this in our stories. Some brands will use humor to cater to the younger markets. it won't suit every market, but there will be a mix of strategies in the storytelling. Celebratory will be a big ticket factor, and to show the 3-act structure will be the perfect time to do that.
Exactly.
We wanted to close this webinar with a video that has been in circulation on Twitter. Someone dug it out from 2007.
Yeah. It actually became viral, you know that? Just because it's so relevant.
Completely viral. And you know why, Shlomi? Because there's no other video of the sort that actually illustrates the phenomenon of how bacteria circulates and how contamination occurs. There's none other video of the sort, which is such a shame, because I think that it would have been really handy to see that early on, so that people could visualize and perhaps act upon.
Yeah, it speaks to the hunger of people to see like an actual story that show versus tell, because as you probably saw from the example we demonstrated today, most of them are really telling you things. They're not really showing in a story format. And when you actually move to the pure visual storytelling form, you actually experience the story as content, almost like entertainment, like the one we're going to show you now. It doesn't feel like an ad. That's the beauty of visual storytelling done right. So I think if you want to see example that also kind of related to this, is just Google for Sandy Hook Promise. It's a great ad from this nonprofit for the mass shooting in 2012. Just look it up. It's a great story to help reduce school violence. So you're going to see the same thing here. Unfortunately, in this example, this is actually came from a TV series, Scrubs from 2007, but the principles still hold.
If I may, all the other ads that we've seen until now did not have Act 1 illustrated. Act 1 is the problem. Act 1 is the pandemic. That's the Act 1. You have absolutely no ad that has attempted to illustrate. Perhaps the cannabis company.
Yeah, the cannabis. So that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Which is the emotional state brought on by the COVID, Thrive. But aside from that, most are arriving after Act 1.
Yeah.
And now we have that 2007 Scrubs to allow us to see what Act 1 may look like.
Do you know the #1 cause of death in the hospital? Your breath? Infection. And do you know how quickly infection spreads in the hospital? Your breath. That doesn't make sense. Don't care. Look, infection can start with a simple sneeze. And then a handshake. Perhaps an accidental collision. Then a simple touch on the shoulder. And just like that, you have a patient in trouble.
In Cabbage's case, as much as I was going to miss him, I was just lucky to get rid of him before he really hurt someone.
You've always been really nice to me, and I just wanted to say thanks and goodbye.
Goodbye, young man.
Lights will guide you home, and I will try to fix you.
That's awesome. I really love that. You know, you can really see here the storytelling power, and you know, that's what brands
actually
should do.
Pretty sad.
Yeah, but
the ending is very sad, because you know that person, the elderly, may suffer gravely from it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. But I was talking more about how brands could really wear the hat of like TV producers and a scriptwriter and really produce real stories that feel like actually almost like real content. You can still drop your big message, branded message at the end, but you know, just devote most of your story to really demonstrating the points you are trying to make, the conflict, the challenges, the customer, whoever you want to feature. But this example, I think, is really a fantastic demonstration of that. What do you think?
So much. It even demonstrates a social responsibility of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the production company that chose to do that scene
Yeah.
had more than just entertainment in mind.
Right. Higher purpose, we call it. Yeah.
There was definitely a social responsibility behind it. There's that the pandemic is severe, but we had other types of health issues in the past, and I think that was also one way to get into people's minds. Since Scrub was a well-watched program, they said, let's take advantage of these eyeballs and share a very social public interest message.
Yeah. So it's amazing how they kind of
now what we need today. And I was having a discussion with you, Shlomi, last week, and with other folks, that we have so many production companies on the bench right now, and we
including
know that
ours.
We can do movies remotely.
Yep.
We don't need to have an entire crew, and we should come together and create stories like this to sensitize the public.
Yeah, and
it doesn't have to be in hospitals. It can be. You were saying it can be an Amazon delivery guy that comes in and brings your merchandise. It can be in the street. It can be in the grocery store.
And I actually, because I have a production studio here that I work with for the past couple of years, one of the things that we probably going to see a resurgence with is, because of the social distancing, is a move towards the animated stories where you don't have to actually go out and shoot. And I think if anyone want to work with us and kind of develop a story that can prove a point, using animation as a series with characters that look like real people, that's what we do. So I think this is a great opportunity for anyone that want to get into visual storytelling and really bring to life
animation, but with real characters. Yes,
absolutely. Okay. Yep.
So one would feel engaged in the story.
Definitely.
You have human-like figures. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that would be the next great storytelling movement, is when you have big crises like this, is production companies come together to build those stories.
Absolutely.
And in order to education. How many new information did we receive over the course of the last 4 weeks that we didn't know?
Yeah, I have a client right now that I'm working with. It's a nonprofit that's helping the homeless, and we're just producing 1,000 stories. It's called Miami 1,000 Stories, and it's really about featuring animated stories of homeless people here in Miami. So we're already doing this, and it's really fantastic example of the discipline of visual storytelling, brand storytelling. So I'm all for it, and I'm doing it every day.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
everybody.
It
was a joy talking about our passion. I hope it was useful. And
yeah,
Shlomi, would you like to do a round two anytime?
Yeah, we can definitely, because constantly there are new examples and new perspectives as the market mature. So we definitely can consider do like another part for this. So thank you so much, Diana, everybody, for joining. We're super excited to see that there was a great attendance today. And definitely reach out to us if you have a question directly through the follow-up email, and also contact us through LinkedIn. We'd love to learn more about what you're working on these days. Yes,
absolutely. Whatever your projects are, we feel free to share them with you. If you want a springboard, we're there to provide our 2 cents.
Exactly. All right. So everybody, really have a wonderful day or evening where you are, and stay safe.
I hope you're well. I hope you're healthy too. We didn't.
Yeah. And
take care, everyone. Bye, Pascal.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.